All right, let's play a little game. We've been collecting for a long time. We've made some mistakes. We've done some things right. I want to hear if you had to start over choosing 5 watches with what you chose for those 5 and what you would do differently. Because I know you didn't do it perfectly. I sure as hell didn't do it perfectly.
It was very close to perfect, but just not perfect.
Okay, so what's your framework for a 5 watch collection? Because I feel like we have some overlap there, how we think about this.
So let's start with the Bulletproof Watch, the watch that you could wear all day, every day, whatever the case may be.
I got mine here, although I think I might do it a little bit differently.
I will do differently too. I have something, but I will do it a bit differently this time.
Yeah, we learned some lessons. Okay.
Absolutely.
I would say a dress watch.
Yeah?
I nailed it. We'll never sell this watch. Would never need to buy another one.
Me, on the other hand, will go a completely different route than what I've done.
Okay. Watch number 3.
Chronograph.
Okay, you have a chronograph, and I know you're good with that.
Gotta have a chronograph.
No, you don't. No, you don't. I would say you need a personality-specific watch. You're a chronograph guy, so you went in that direction. Yeah. I have found what works for me, and I've doubled down on what I like, and I took it one step further. So we'll call it like a personality kind of thing. Something specific to you. Where do we go from there?
Let's do funky.
Yeah, okay.
Spicy, a bit out there, a bit different.
You happy with your funky one?
Yes and no. I'm happy with the brand. I'm not necessarily happy with the model, but I'll talk about that.
Okay, I think I know what you're going to say, and I think I have a different approach. I went very fun, low pressure, can't go wrong kind of thing, so I feel comfortable with that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, okay.
And where do we end?
Last one is going to be obtainable luxury.
Okay, which what I would consider like your go-to everyday thing.
Yeah, for example.
Not necessarily bulletproof, but can dress up, can dress down.
But something a bit luxurious.
Yeah.
Obtainable.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and so what did you do?
I don't have one. I don't have one. And that's probably the biggest regret of my collection journey so far, but I do have some ideas as far as where I would go, and it really might be my next watch. It should be my next watch.
Okay, so I'm, again, happy and not happy, and I'm gonna tell you why, but I think it's probably a brand that people don't necessarily think about.
All right, let's start it off with our Bulletproof.
Yes. So the watch that I have in my collection is the Rolex Armena 5513, which I'm generally very happy with. But if I had to do it all over again, I would go with something different, a bit more modern, and that would be the 14060.
A little bit more bulletproof because it's not vintage.
Yes, exactly. Because the 5513 is great, it's amazing, I love it, but I'm a bit afraid. That's why I don't wear it every day. I can't wear it every day. The 14060 is modern enough that I feel it's more bulletproof, it's more sturdy, but because it's not a maxi case, it still gives me vintage vibes, which I quite like, I have to say.
Yeah, the movement is a little bit newer and therefore probably in a little bit better shape. The loom is gonna stay intact a little bit longer, but I will say, specific to that reference, it's great because you have the aluminum bezel, which has more of a vintage feel and kind of can fade and gain character over the time. Mm-hmm. You can do tritium or luminova, and you have the slimmer case still.
Great point. I would go with the tritium, so the 14060, not the 14060M. There's the earlier one, so like late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, I fully agree. And that's something that's, again, vintagey enough for me, but it's also modern enough to be almost like an everyday, if not an everyday driver.
Yeah, and we should point out, Submariner is not exactly approachable luxury, let's say, or it's not that affordable for a place to start, but it will last you a lifetime. And they're cheaper now than they probably have ever been.
Exactly.
Or and recently.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the 14060 is still probably the cheapest because vintage, we're easily talking 5 digits. Yeah. It's 5513, 5512, even more. And the new ones are expensive. So this is in between. It's about 6, 7, 8,000, depending on the condition, depending on box and papers. But I think way under 10, you can get like a very, very nice watch.
Yeah, and a good piece of advice for finding deals is most people either go latest and greatest, current generation, or that sort of thing, or they go vintage in that like in-between area. We're talking generally 80s, 90s, 2000s. Is a little bit slept on, so that is a good place to find deals.
Also, if you're our age, sadly, I'm much older than he is. It's also our birth year watch. It could be a birth year watch.
Yeah, fair. Although I don't really care about that.
No, but some people do. And I understand. So you could also think of it as a birth year watch.
The Bulletproof watch that I went with is this Benris Type 1. I'm generally happy with it, but I don't know if I would do it quite the same. There are obvious benefits. It's a brush case, so I can scratch it up. It has this bi-directional, smoothly rotating bezel that could be either a timer or a GMT, so it's like a pretty perfect travel watch. It's also extremely under the radar. No tets, no branding, no nothing. Even if you told someone it's a Benris, they're like, what the hell is that? Yeah. But it's a lot of watch for someone with a more moderately sized wrist. And I don't know, I'm having some doubts about it. I think I would generally stick with a lower price point because if it is going to be a beat it up kind of thing, I don't want it to be that expensive, although I think the sub looks better when you beat it up.
Yeah.
But I would keep it, I want it to be more affordable because I don't want to sink that much money into something that I don't really care about. It's more function than romance, let's say. So I like this sort of thing. You can pick it up between like $1,000 and $2,000, definitely closer to $1,000. But if someone tempted me and said, hey, you want to trade for a Serica 5313, I would maybe do that. A little bit more manageable case size, a little bit prettier, let's say, or just like more attractive.
True.
But offers the same diving, GMT, dive watch, field watch kind of thing with a different design uniqueness, but just better on the wrist.
Okay.
So I don't hate it. I might do it differently. If I wanted to spend more money, I would go something I've been warming up to recently, which is a Pelagos 39.
Oh, nice. Yes.
I haven't always liked the snowflake hand, but I think with these square hour markers it works. And that's, again, one that like would outlive me.
Yeah, it's a cool watch. So the Benris is a pass. I don't know why I did that. It's the pass.
Yeah, it's like you're on American Idol. Benris is a, like it, don't love it, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. I like the watch. I understand your reasoning, and the Tudor is a great pick. Better pick.
So yeah, I think good for now is the best way I would put this.
Okay, yeah, fine. Good for now.
Okay, next category. You want to do dress?
Yeah, let's do dress. So, yeah, as I said, dress watch is fairly simple. If I need to dress up, if I need to wear a suit or a tuxedo, I know, again, tuxedo, you shouldn't wear a watch, blah, blah, blah. I know.
But you're not someone that dresses up super often,
no,
I gotta say.
not a lot. But when I have to, then I do it.
So what is your dress watch that you have currently?
The dress watch that I have currently is basically, it could be anything and everything. For sentimental reasons, it's an Omega 2505, reference 2505, which is one of those jumbo case vintage watches. If I had to do it again, I would go much fancier. And
Well, you would spend a lot of money on something that you don't wear that often? I'm confused by that.
yeah, but I'm like that. I don't care. Because I think that it's my collection, and if I want a nice watch and I want a dress watch, then I would really like to have like a proper dress watch. And maybe that dress watch would make me dress differently, and maybe that dress watch would make me, dress in a way that I can wear it more often.
Okay. So, I mean, we try to keep it relatively affordable. I think you started off with what you have already as an affordable one.
Yes.
So what would be your...
But yes, but defined relatively. Because we can do very expensive, and I'm not going to say 50,000, 30,000, not even 20,000.
Let's say even a cheap Calatrava would be not approachable.
No, because I wanted to say Calatrava.
Okay, so there we
Because I
go.
think it's about like, yeah.
The Omega is an easy way to get into.
Yes, but with Patek, you can still get something around like 7, 8, 9,000. Compared to like a 140/60, which is again 7, 8,000. It's not a super, super expensive watch. Yes, those are smaller, which may not be, fitting to my wrist size, but when I checked out our mutual friend Chris's watch, that's like a gray watch. It's maybe a teeny tiny bit too small for me.
Yeah, the white gold ellipse.
Exactly, but something in that realm, I think that would be a really classy piece that would probably make me wear it more often, which means probably dress to fit that style a bit more often.
Yeah, I mean it's a one and done. Like if you have a Patek dress watch, I don't think you would ever need to upgrade per se. But I also think for a lot of people who are like, I'm really only going to wear this for like really important meetings or for a wedding or like an anniversary dinner, let's say like a handful of times, like 10 times a year, I would say your Omega that you mentioned at the top would be perfect for a lot of people.
True. It's not that I'm not happy with the Omega, I am, but if I had to go back, I would put a bit more thought into what I bought.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
For me, dress watch, it's kind of my home territory. And yeah, I'm very happy with what I have with my square yellow gold AP. think I knocked it out of the park. I never want to get rid of that watch.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's because I'll never see it again. And it's much more affordable than people might expect. So I feel happy with that. I don't have anything I would do differently. But essentially the story behind it is I was looking for a Cartier tank as my kind of one and done ultra classic dress watch. And I thought, okay, let me look around. Let's see what Vacheron has, sort from low to high. Let's see what AP has, sort from low to high. Let's see what Patek has, sort from low to high. And that is the advice I would still pass on to a lot of people and do pass on to a lot of people, because there are great steel, white gold, yellow gold dress watches. For a few $1,000s, I paid a little over $4 for something that is truly unique, that gets very experienced collectors that I look up to excited about. And yeah, just find me another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that one, yeah, I'm super happy with it. I knew as soon as I saw it that it fit my qualifications. I had the gut feeling like if I don't buy this now, I'll just never see it again. I waited 24 hours, I slept on it. And it's still probably, as someone who's made a lot of mistakes in this hobby, just a clear win.
I mean, I have nothing against that watch. It's a bit too small for me.
Sure.
But other than that, I think it's as classy as it gets.
Yeah, and kind of like you said, I mean, I wear it with a suit to a wedding, whatever. But I also like, you know, I feel that dress watches are more versatile than people give them credit for. T-shirt and jeans with a yellow gold square can be kind of a good look.
Super nice, yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. What's our next category on the list?
Chronograph.
Okay, yeah. So this is something where you're definitely a chronograph guy.
Yeah.
So this is like very specific to you.
Yeah.
And then I am also doubling down on something that I like that's very specific to me. So tell me about chronographs. And I know you have a lot, but let's narrow it down to one.
This one. I mean, I don't need to talk a lot about my love for Speedmasters. It's very, very, very well documented. And when it comes to Speedmasters, there's really only one that I would go for, and that's the one that I did go for, so I'm very happy with my choice. And that's a vintage Speedmaster. We can, look at all the references, and there's a ton that I really enjoyed. The 2998, the Ed White, even the first one, 10915. But I think that something that is relatively affordable is still the last 321 generation, which is this one, so the 145012.
Yeah.
This is cheaper than a sub, or around the price of a sub. It has everything that a vintage Speedmaster should have. It has a 321 inside. It has the step dial, the applied logo, the dot over 90 bezel, etc., etc., etc.
And it's everything that a chronograph should be.
Yeah, totally. So
if you want to nail that category,
absolutely,
that's an easy way to do it.
If I push the reset button, as I said, and I have to go with a chronograph, I would pick the same watch.
You wouldn't be tempted by a modern Speedmaster, for example?
I thought about it. That was my other pick. So either this one or the 3861.
Yeah, the current generation.
The current generation Hasselite. However, I still think that what I said about vintage and being afraid of vintage regarding the sub, and it stands for the sub, it doesn't stand for this. I'm happy with the Wabi. And eventually, if something happens and the loom flakes off, whatever, I'm totally fine with it.
You're not worried about repair costs for a vintage chronograph? Like, would you give that advice to someone who's like, hey, I'm early 20s, I want a chronograph?
No, get a new one or a neo vintage. Okay. Like get something from the 90s, get something with like a sturdy movement, like an 861, 1861, absolutely, that's fine. The newer, the better. So I think 90s Speedmasters is to go. I have to say, knocking on wood, my vintage Speedmasters, they haven't really had a lot of issues. Okay, I don't obviously wear them every single day, but still, I'm happy with my choice. I would stick to my choice.
Okay, yeah, so you're very comfortable with what you chose, and as a general advice, yeah, Speedmaster for sure, and then kind of up to you if you want to do vintage or modern.
Absolutely, I mean, absolutely. It depends on how many pieces you have. If we talk about 5 watches, it gets in the rotation pretty frequently. I would say get something neo-vintage. So as I said, 861, 1861 is probably the category to go for. If you like a bit of twist, then I would say go with the vintage 361.
Okay. See, for my take on this, I'm not a chronograph guy, so I am going to talk about what I call my like saucy category, which is basically something that feels very me, but doubled down and maybe a little bit further. So I like thin, sculptural, time-only stuff. So let's say the AP is like that at its kind of peak form in the dress watch category. And because I like that sort of thing, I went further with that. Now, my regret is that maybe I went a little bit too far because I have two 70s Longines and I have this like octagonal thin angular Certina thing. I wish I could combine these into one piece and maybe combine the budget into one nicer thing.
Okay.
But at the same time, if I want a second thing that's just like fun and feels cool and feels very Thomas, let's say, I think I did okay. I maybe just did a little bit too far.
Okay.
So if I could maybe do this over again.
I'm wondering what it's going to be, really. This, and this molded into one. What's it going to be?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was looking the other day at some early Grand Seikos, and I think those hit the
nice.
same kind of thing, like the 62 GS kind of case. That would be an alternative where I could maybe spend a little bit more and get the same feel and get something that feels slightly more monumental. Because if I am getting dressed during the day, I'm like, okay, let's go for a saucier watch today. I could choose this one, I could choose this one, I could choose this one. They all feel a little bit interchangeable instead of having just one.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're already going to commit to something one step farther, don't do it again and again and again and again, because the more watches you have, the more you have to store them and repair them and things like that. So I would maybe keep with the same category, because I have discovered something that like spiritually rings very true, but I didn't need to like explore it as far as I did.
Yeah.
So I think if it comes down, like when it comes time to sell and kind of free up money for a next thing, this is going to be the category that I clear out first.
Yeah, you should consolidate and just maybe get one.
Yeah, and who knows what that'll be, but again, there's a lot of things that I like about these, but none of them on their own is that special. And I think if I could use the funds that I have spent throughout the years on this saucy category, which is a very tempting category, of course, I would be a little bit more deliberate with it.
I mean, and that's a good point, right? I mean, everybody has a journey when you're into watches, whether you're collecting, whether you just have one. But then when you have one, you have another one, and then you have another one. And then is it a collection? I guess it is. Do you need to have these many watches? Maybe not. I've been through that. I have a lot of watches that I look at and it's like, I don't want to sell them because I have them and I love them, but I should have, waited and maybe put the money aside and then get something else instead.
Yeah, I think also what people talked about between like buying watches you like and being a collector, I think that line is about drilling down on a certain thing.
Yeah.
So I would say you are a chronograph collector,
Yeah.
and I am a collector of, let's just call it like thin, angular 70s kind of stuff. So in a way, it's been useful to identify with a particular direction.
Yeah.
But also there are financial downsides to that.
Sadly.
Category number 4. Let's talk about the funky stuff and then end with like an attainable luxury, like kind of good everyday thing.
Yeah.
What kind of funky you getting, B?
Funky, I meant as in design-wise a bit different, a bit playful, and those are to me some of the indie brands, not necessarily indie as in expensive indie brands like Laurent Ferrier or MB&F, albeit I really love them, and I think they are funky in their own terms.
But we're trying to keep it relatively approachable.
Exactly. So I'm thinking more of the, some of the micro brands or the smaller brands.
Yeah, which is a category that's more robust than ever now.
Yeah, and so I didn't pick a model, but I picked a brand. I picked Ming.
Yeah.
Not the model that I have,
Okay.
but
Because you have the Burgundy Dial 1709.
precisely, I have that. But if I had to do over,
Yep.
I would still get a Ming, probably something a bit more sophisticated, maybe something with a slimmer case, with a display case back where you can see the movement. I know it's maybe not the cheapest.
It's more expensive than the one you currently have.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think around like 3, 4 max, you can find something like that. Like think of, for example, their GMT.
Yeah, they have a gilt one and then a Kyoto. Kind of
Exactly.
like a warm and a cool.
Like a brown one and the green one, right. Like that's, for example, a super nice model. It's a tad more, as I said, sophisticated than the 1709.
Sure, yeah. You get a complication as well.
You get a complication, but the dial is better, but the overall design, again, is just like Ming. And I think we've talked about Ming in other videos. Like the design language is, a lot. For a reason. for a reason. Design language is very consistent.
Yes.
So for me, a bit of funky, a bit of spicy, a bit of designy pick would be something from Mink, probably, as I said, between the 2,000 and 4,000 euro dollar category.
Okay, so I feel like this is an easy category to kind of, it's low cost and therefore low pressure. And so you can get something that's a little more out there. And then if you need to sell it later on or you don't wear it that much, you haven't really lost that much. This is the category that I impulse buy a lot because I think it's built for that. So my go-to, I would say in my collection, I have a handful of swatches. And I mean, a G-Shock would also fit here, but I would say, at least for me, a swatch it's an easy way to get in color, like a funky dial, but it's made out of plastic. It's not gonna hurt the budget. And you can buy 10 of them for the price of a main,
Yeah, absolutely.
Or yeah, even more than that.
Oh, it's great. It's a great brand. I mean, Swatch is, but also Casio, the G-Shock. You mentioned the G-Shock. I love my G-Shock. I have one. I think everybody should have one. I'm not sure if you should have more.
Yeah.
I don't need another G-Shock once I have one, but I do.
But if you want to, it's like
sure.
it's easy. So that's the thing where it's like, we're talking about what we did and maybe what we regret and what we did right. This one, it's kind of hard to regret because it's like it's just there to make you happy and be purely fun.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh my God, I spent so much money. Mania is obviously a little bit different of a story because that's a bigger budget item.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm going with Swatch and no regrets there.
I think Swatch is more fun, as you said, because you can look back and see, all the vintage ones, and there's a ton of them on like the secondary market, on eBay, whatever.
Yeah.
They're colorful, they're small ones, large ones, this and that. You can just choose basically any. Casios or G-Shocks in general, they're not that versatile. These days, yes. Back in the day, not so much. But yeah, I think Swatch is
And
a great
even
pick.
like collector level swatches are generally like a few $100s.
Yeah.
But of course you can find them for pennies essentially.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a great pick. I like it.
Last category, you're looking at it from like a approachable luxury kind of thing. And
Yes.
I'm approaching more like an everyday watch, but it's really, at least in my mind, kind of the same thing.
Almost, yeah. So my idea is that I'm looking at a brand that I think for the price that you pay actually offers you much more than similar brands. And you want me to tell you the brand?
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so what are we looking at here?
We're looking at not necessarily this model, but we're looking at a Grand Seiko.
What's the reference for this?
I don't know. I have to look it up in the back. No, this is just to show that, to me, a brand that punches above its weight class is a Grand Seiko.
Yeah.
Perhaps any other modern Grand Seikos, even vintage ones. But I think modern ones, and specifically these ones with like the 3 big and the 2 small link with the display case backs, the SBGAs, they really offer you a lot of watch for the money. And they're not necessarily cheap. I know we're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6,000. But for the money, for 3,000 to 4,000 euros, especially if you take a loop and look at the details, the dial, the hands, the polishings, it's crazy. It's incredibly beautiful. And I mean, you and I, we've been to Tokyo, we've seen a lot of Seikos, we've been to the museum, we've seen the old pieces, we've seen the new ones, we see the regular Seikos, the Grand Seikos. I mean, I love the brand, obviously, Seiko as well as Grand Seiko, but I think, again, for the money you're paying, this is...
Screw down crown, nice case architecture, beautiful details.
Drilled lock holes, which is very rare these days. Any dial variation, of course, you have the white birch and all those beautiful dials. You have GMT complications, you have chronographs. I have to say, the more complicated a modern Grand Seiko is, the less I like, because they're usually big, like very, very big.
They get very big very quick.
Yeah, but a time only...
But they're making smaller ones all the time.
True. But this one, for example, you have a date complication, which I think is always useful.
Yep.
The model that I have has the power reserve on the front as well, which adds a teeny tiny bit of spice.
It's divisive, but yeah.
Some people like it, some people don't. You can get it without, you can get it with.
I mean, it's the Seiko Grand Seiko universe. They're going to make 1,000 different variations of everything.
Yeah.
All right, so no regrets from you?
No, absolutely not.
If you had to do it again, would you do it the exact same?
I would do not that specific reference, but the sister reference or the brother reference is the SPGA 375, and I have the 439. So the difference is that one has the stamped logo and scale for the power reserve, the other one has printed. I have the printed one. That's the cheaper version, steel case back, only 3-link bracelet. And this is the fancier version with like the 5 links, as I said, or like 3 links with the 2 decorative links and a display case back. I will go with that one.
Would you choose this over Oyster Perpetual?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Or something, a Datejust, for example?
Yes.
Why? Because that's what comes to mind when I mean, it's not exactly affordable, but you can get them for, like if you go, there are cheaper Datejusts out there, there are cheaper Explorer ones out there are cheaper
That's a good question.
Oyster Perpetuals out there
Yeah, you're right. It's
for essentially the same price as this.
No, you're right. It's a good question. If I look at my collection, if I look at the 5 watches, I have the sub. We agreed on that one. I don't need another Rolex. But I wanted something that's not Swiss, and I wanted something, as I said, that really offers a lot of value for the money, and I think Grand Seiko is that. So I would be, it's also a bit chunkier than a Datejust.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would definitely go for the Grand Seiko.
More wrist presence for sure. Okay, yeah.
So with the Calatrava, with the sub, I have thin ones, I have big ones, and this is kind of in between.
Okay, yeah. And generally more approachable than a Rolex, for example.
And I think it's very understated. Like a lot of people still think, oh, Grand Seiko, oh, please, it's a Seiko. No, it's not. No, it's not.
See, this is a category that I don't have as far as everyday luxury, let's call it. I have a handful of watches, and I rotate them all equally. They're all specialized, let's say, but there's no like one go-to. And that's kind of a regret of mine in a way. I mean, I wake up and I just kind of feel whatever the day calls for. It's a little bit dressier of a day, so I'll go that, or a little bit sportier of a day, so I'll go that route, or a little bit funkier of a day, I'll go that route. But there's never just been like one common denominator, which is opposite of what a lot of people have. I apply that in other areas of my life. I don't own a navy blue suit. I do have a brown pinstripe for whatever reason. So I go a little bit out there, but never like in that kind of center home base kind of thing. But I think, I'm looking at always shopping for my Nets watch, and that's like the actual category that I need to do that would be smartest. So I don't have an example for my own collection that fits this. The one that I'm considering most now that checks the boxes that I could wear with anything on any given day that's still like respectable and attractive and has good details and things like that is the Cartier Santos Galbet reference 2823. It's a 32 millimeter, obviously steel with a beautiful bracelet, wears like a 36, I would say. And there are a lot of people who compare it to Cartier's version of the Datejust. It accomplishes the same goals. You pick it up, you put it on, you wear it, it goes with anything. People are like, yes, that's a good watch. You know it's a good watch. But the only problem is I don't have one.
See, looking at your watches, and I know these ones and that one, and even the ones that you mentioned, but they're not here, I'm surprised you still don't have a Cartier.
It's a starting point, and then I go somewhere else.
You should.
It's kind of the gold standard, and then I get a little freakier with
Be
it.
like, look at I have this much money in my wallet. I'm gonna look at the Cartier, and I'm gonna stay there for once. I really think I mean, people say, yeah, Cartiers are hot these days and blah, blah, blah. And they are hot these days. But I think even when they were not as hot or whatever the case may be, you were still more into Cartier. And it's not a fashion thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that just makes sense for you too.
I've had a Santos before, but it was not your typical Santos. It was like a very small, octagonal, tropical dial.
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, which was cool, and it turned me on to the Santos, but I have to be different, unfortunately. It's just a personality flaw. But yeah, when it comes to everyday luxury, Santos is the way I would go. And maybe might go, it's on my Chrono 24 notepad like many times over.
It's on the horizon?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And that brings us to our last session, which is just kind of general advice that you've learned along the way. We've hit on a couple specific points with specific categories and specific watches. I would say the number one thing that I've learned is that you're never going to do it right. You're going to mess up and you're going to learn things along the way. No one has a perfect collection or gets it right the first time. It's good to be deliberate and to really think about what you want before you spend a considerable amount of money on a watch, for example. But I've learned a lot by buying a lot of crap.
Yeah.
I think that's what everybody does. I did the same. And again, I think if you have the money and you like the watch, but you don't love the watch, maybe don't buy it and don't spend the money. Put that money aside. In your head, spend it, but don't spend it. And then when you saved up again, and then maybe that's enough for something else, cool. If not, then put that aside and spend it in your head, and then save again. And then instead of buying these, as you said, buy one that you're really in love with.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of watches that I respect on paper, but don't work for me. The Speedmaster is one where
Same for me.
I wish this worked for me. I wish I had the wrist to pull it off. And I've gone from the point of like, oh, I really want to buy this and just kind of, I will make it work, to just coming to peace with the fact that it's not going to work. I can respect it, but I don't have to own it.
Fully agree with you. Same for me. As I said earlier, I have dress watches and I have models that I really enjoy, that I would really like to put on a shelf and look at it because it's beautiful. It's just not something that I would buy, and not necessarily because of the price, but because I just know I would never wear it.
Yeah.
But I have like the Reverso, for example. I have the utmost respect for the Reverso, and people who love it. More power to you. It's just not something that I would wear. I know, but if I look at my watches, I would never pick the Reverso.
And my two last pieces of advice actually go against each other. One thing that I'm happy with and one thing I wish I had done more. The thing that I'm happy with is I've gotten to know myself and my taste better through my collecting journey, and I've kind of narrowed in on a style. And like I said, I've gotten used to the idea that not every watch is for me, and I found what works for me. But at the same time, I have a lot of watches that only I like. I've gotten deals on them because no one else wants them, but if I ever need to sell them, if I need a kidney transfer for whatever reason, no one's really trying to buy 70s Longines or a Chrono Swiss Cabrio or whatever it is. It's like on a certain level, I would have been better off in that realm with a Rolex, a Speedmaster, a Grand Seiko, you name it.
Maybe after this video, people can to Chrono Swiss. No, I mean, at the end of the day, we can give whatever advice we want people. Sometimes you just have to go through it yourself. Because didn't people tell me back then? Of course they did. Hey, be patient, save your money. I'm like, yeah, I know better. That's a process you have to go through.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
All right, if you've got advice, one piece, if you narrow it down in a sentence, drop it in a comment below. Help out your fellow collectors. This has been Ballast Forensi. I'm Thomas Hendricks. We'll see you soon.